Level 1, the digger. You're 19. You came from Marignan because a friend told you the Garimpo pays 8,000 rays a month. Back home, you made 50 a day laying bricks. So you packed 2 sets of clothes and took a bus 2,000 kilometers into the Amazon. Nobody asked for your ID. Nobody asked for a resume. A man at the end of the Transgarimpero Road pointed at a pit and said, "Start digging." You stand waist deep in brown water for 14 hours a day. You use a shovel and a hydraulic hose to blast sediment off the pit walls. 1 metric ton of earth has to be moved to extract 1 gram of gold. You move several tons a day. Your back gives out after 3 weeks. You keep working because there is no hospital within 500 kilometers and no bus going home until you earn enough to pay for one. The pit is 15 meters deep. The walls are unsupported clay. When it rains, the walls soften. When the walls soften, they collapse. In 2009, a mine collapse in Ghana killed 18 diggers in seconds. Nobody counted the ones in Brazil because nobody was keeping records. You sleep in a hammock strung between 2 trees at the edge of the pit. Mosquitoes carry malaria. 1 in 3 garimperos in the Tapajos Basin has had it. You will get it too. The medicine costs more out here than it does in town because everything costs more out here. The camp store sells rice at 5 times the city price. You pay in gold. You always pay in gold. By the end of the month, your 8,000 raise is closer to 3,000 after the store and the fuel and the equipment rental take their cut. Your friend was not lying about the money. He just forgot to mention where it goes. Level 2, the Mercury Handler. You're 23. You've been promoted from the pit to the processing station. Your job is to turn dirt into gold. You do this with mercury. 3 kilograms of mercury for every kilogram of gold extracted. You pour liquid mercury over the crushed sediment with your bare hands. The mercury bonds to the gold particles and forms a silver amalgam. Then you heat the amalgam with a blowtorch until the mercury evaporates and the gold stays behind. You breathe in the vapor. It smells like nothing. It tastes like metal. It is destroying your central nervous system 1 shift at a time. Mercury is a neurotoxin. Chronic exposure causes tremors and memory loss and kidney failure and blurred vision. You don't know this because nobody told you. You know your hands shake sometimes. You know you forget things you shouldn't forget. You know that 3 of the older handlers at the last camp stopped being able to hold a conversation. They just stared. Nobody called it mercury poisoning. They called it getting old. Nearly all the mercury used in Brazilian garimpos is smuggled in illegally. You don't ask where it comes from. A plastic bottle arrives in a wooden crate with no label. You pour it. You heat it. You breathe it. You do this 6 days a week. The gold you produce goes into a small leather pouch. The pouch goes to the buyer. The mercury goes into the river. It enters the fish. It enters the people who eat the fish. It enters the breast milk of Munduruku mothers 200 kilometers downstream. Their children are being born with deformities. You will never meet those children. You will never know their names. You are connected to them by a silver liquid that you pour with your bare hands into brown water that flows downhill forever. Level 3, the cook. You're 31. You're one of the only women in the camp. You feed 40 miners 3 meals a day in a kitchen made of tarps and scrap wood at the edge of the rainforest. Rice and beans and dried meat. The supplies come by boat up the Kripori River or by charter plane to a clandestine landing strip cut into the jungle. Everything is expensive because everything has to be carried in. A kilo of rice costs 4 times what it costs in Itaituba. A bottle of cachaça costs 10 times. You came here because your marriage ended and the Garimpo was the only place that would pay you without asking questions. You make more than the diggers some months because the camp owner knows that miners who eat well dig longer. You are essential in a way that nobody acknowledges. You see everything. You see the men who are getting sick from mercury. You see the ones who are drinking too much. You see the ones who get paid on Friday and lose it all by Sunday at the camp bar. You see the new ones arrive with bright eyes and the old ones leave with nothing. You own a motorized canoe now. You bought it after 3 years of saving. You use it to transport food and supplies between camps along the river. The men respect you because you survived here longer than most of them. Some of the women who come to the Garimpo don't end up cooking. They end up in the makeshift brothels at the edge of the camp. You don't talk about that. Nobody talks about that. You just keep the rice boiling and the coffee hot and the camp running 1 meal at a time. Level 4, the machinery operator. You're 27. You drive a yellow cat excavator that costs 500,000 rees and drinks 1,100 liters of diesel per day. You are the reason the Garimpo shifted from artisanal to industrial. 1 month of hand digging produces what you can move in an afternoon. You tear open the forest floor in strips. You push rivers sideways. You create moonscapes out of jungle. Satellite images of your work look like a disease spreading across green tissue. The excavator was smuggled in by barge and then driven 200 kilometers down illegal roads, cut through protected forest. It has no serial number plate anymore. Someone removed it with a grinder. If IBAMA, the Environmental Enforcement Agency, raids the site, the excavator is the first thing they destroy. They've blown up over 300 machines in the Yanomami territory alone. Each one represented 500,000 reais of someone's investment. That someone does not operate the machine. That someone lives in a city 3,000 kilometers away. You just drive it. You make 12,000 reais a month. That's more than most teachers in Brazil. You send half of it home and spend the rest at the camp store. The diesel for your machine is also smuggled in. The landing strip that the fuel arrives on is also illegal. The road you drove the excavator down is also illegal. Nothing you interact with on a daily basis exists in any government record. You are a ghost operating a ghost machine in a place that officially has no mining activity. Satellite images tell a different story. In 2022, Garimpo mining covered over 2,600 square kilometers of the Brazilian Amazon. That's bigger than the city of São Paulo. Level 5, the pilot. You're 35. You fly a single-engine Cessna 206 in and out of clandestine airstrips, carved into the Amazon canopy. The strips are 400 meters long. Some of them are 300. You need 250 to land, and every meter after that is luxury. The strips have no lights and no radar and no control tower. You navigate by river bends and clearings in memory. When the fog rolls in, you fly below the canopy line and hope the trees don't close around you. You carry mercury in on the way there. You carry gold out on the way back. A single flight moves 5 to 10 kilograms of gold, worth up to $700,000 at market price. You make $2,000 per flight. You do 3 or 4 flights a week during peak season. You've been doing this for 8 years. 2 pilots you knew are dead. One hit a tree line on approach. One disappeared over the jungle and was never found. The plane was never found either. If IBAMA catches you, they destroy the airstrip. If the federal police catch you, they seize the plane and charge you with environmental crimes and smuggling. You've been caught once. You paid a fine that was less than 1 flight's earnings, and were back in the air within a month. The gold you carry has no serial number. Once it's melted down, it's untraceable. It enters the legal supply chain through buyers in Itaituba who operate under a legal provision that until recently let them purchase gold without verifying its origin. The system was designed to be exploited. You are just the part of it that flies. Level 6, the gold buyer. You're 42. You sit behind a desk in Itaituba, the illegal gold capital of Brazil. A hydrostatic scale connected to a computer calculates purity using Archimedes' principle. Behind you is a bar stocked with cachaça and whiskey. A sign reads, "Miners don't pay here." You buy gold from garimpiros at a discount and sell it into the legal supply chain at full market price. The spread is your profit. You are technically a financial institution. A distribuidora de títulos e valores mobiliários. You are legally authorized to purchase gold. For years, the law gave you something called presumed good faith. That meant you had no obligation to verify where the gold came from. The miner said he dug it from a legal claim. You wrote that down. Nobody checked. The gold entered the system clean. It was the easiest money laundering operation in the world. 1 ounce of gold is now worth nearly twice the price of an ounce of cocaine, and it's infinitely easier to move across borders. You've handled tens of millions of reais in gold. Your office has a custom map on the wall showing every clandestine airstrip in the Tapajós region. You know the names of every major garimpo within 500 kilometers. You know which ones are producing and which ones are dry. You know which politicians received campaign donations from mining bosses. You know all of this because in this town, gold is not just currency. It is the entire economy. Itaituba accounts for 75% of all illegal gold produced in Brazil. The gold leaves here and enters refineries in Switzerland and India and the United Arab Emirates. By the time it becomes a wedding ring in London, it has been melted and remelted and documented and redocumented until every trace of the pit and the mercury and the dead fish and the sick children has been erased. That's your function. You are the point where illegal becomes legal. You are the door between 2 worlds. Level 7, the enforcer. You're 38. You work for the dono, the mine owner. Your job is to make sure the operation runs without interruption. That means keeping the workers in line and keeping outsiders out. You carry a pistol and a satellite phone. The pistol is for problems. The satellite phone is for bigger problems. The garimpo operates in indigenous territory. The Munduruku and the Yanomami don't want you here. Neither does IBAMA. Neither does the federal police. You are the first line of defense against all of them. When an inspection team is spotted heading upriver, you radio ahead, and the miners scatter into the forest. The excavators get covered with branches. The mercury gets buried. The camp looks abandoned within 30 minutes. You've done this drill dozens of times. Workers who try to leave before their debt is settled get a conversation with you. Some of them borrowed money for the bus ride in. Some of them owe the camp store for food and tools and medicine. The debt grows faster than the wages. That's the design. According to a UNODC study, as many as 40% of gold miners in the Tapajos Basin may be victims of human trafficking for forced labor. You don't call it trafficking. You call it an agreement. The workers agreed to work until the debt is paid. The fact that the debt never gets paid is not your problem. Your problem is keeping the gold flowing. You answer to the dono. The dono answers to someone in the city. That person answers to someone with a bank account in a different country. You've never met them. You've never seen their face. You just know the phone number. Level 8, the dono. You're 50. You own the operation. You own the excavators and the fuel supply and the camp store and the airstrip. You live 3,000 kilometers away in a house with a pool. You've never stood in a mining pit. You've never touched mercury. Your hands are clean in every sense of the word. You are worth over $200 million. Some of it is in mining companies. Some of it is in cattle ranches. Some of it is in political donations. You funded 60% of a mayoral campaign in Itaituba. You donated to a presidential re-election campaign. Under that administration, the mining sector enjoyed political backing unprecedented since Brazil's return to democracy. Environmental enforcement budgets were slashed. Ibama raids dropped. Your production increased. You buy smuggled mercury by the hundreds of kilograms. You sell gold through companies registered in your wife's name. You pay the pilots and the buyers and the enforcers through intermediaries, so your name never appears on a transaction. You have lawyers in Brasilia and accountants in São Paulo and a ranch in Mato Grosso that produces nothing but functions as an excellent place to park money. You are the system. You are the reason 12. 4 million metric tons of earth were removed from the Amazon in a single year. You are the reason Munduruku children are being born with mercury in their blood. You sit by your pool and check gold prices on your phone. They've never been higher. You've never been richer. You will probably never go to prison because the investigation moves slower than the money, and the money has already moved. Level 9, the river. It was here before the gold and before the mercury and before the excavators and before the airstrips. The Tapajos runs 840 kilometers through the heart of the Amazon. It cuts through indigenous territories and national parks and impoverished towns and hundreds of garimpo sites that scar its banks like open wounds. It carries mercury downstream at concentrations that exceed safe limits by a factor of 10. The fish absorb it. The people eat the fish. The cycle is invisible and permanent. In the Yanomami territory alone, there are 30,000 indigenous people living alongside 20,000 illegal miners. The miners brought malaria. The miners brought mercury. The miners brought roads that opened the forest to cattle ranchers and loggers, who followed the miners in like secondary infections. The river doesn't care about gold prices. It doesn't distinguish between legal and illegal. It just carries what's put into it, the sediment and the poison and the diesel, and delivers it downstream to people who never asked for any of it. Level 10, the gold. It was formed in the collision of neutron stars billions of years before the Earth existed. It settled into the planet's crust 4 billion years ago. It doesn't corrode. It doesn't rust. It doesn't decay. It is the most permanent thing humans have ever valued, and the trail it leaves behind is the most destructive. Once it's melted down, it's untraceable. It passes through the buyer in Itaituba, and the refinery in Switzerland, and the jeweler in Dubai, and the display case in London, and by then, it's just a ring. A necklace. A bar in a vault. Nobody asks where it came from. Nobody asks about the 19-year-old standing in brown water for 14 hours. Nobody asks about the mercury handler whose hands won't stop shaking. Nobody asks about the children downstream. The gold doesn't care. It was here before all of them. It will be here after all of them. It sits in the earth and waits to be found. And every time it is found, someone pays a price that the gold itself will never carry.